Okay, well, welcome everyone to the Gut Rules Masterclass. Thank you so much for being here. We are very excited to share this with so many of you live. And for those who are watching the recording, we welcome you whenever and wherever you are tuning in from. My name is Brian Mariani. I am the son of Russell Mariani and Megan Moore. My parents founded the Center for Functional Nutrition many decades ago. I believe it was 1981, if I have my date correctly. It's been a long time. And my dad has been dedicated to the education of finding the intricacies of health and well-being because he himself was diagnosed and had some very, very severe symptoms as a young man and was prescribed by his doctors with some very, very serious conditions. And the outcomes were very, very scary as a young man. And he decided to take his life in his own hands and educated himself and found some truly life-changing and incredible teachers on his path. And in a short amount of time, he took his life from what felt like a death sentence to a long and healthy life. And throughout that process, he has been professionally working with people for over 40 years and has dedicated his life to finding ways to really serve and educate tens of thousands of people all around the world. And here tonight, we have an incredible group with us live and many people who will be turning in later. It's very, very important to us that what you hear from Russell tonight is educational. Nothing that Russell says is meant to prescribe or diagnose anything. That being said, in his over 40 years, he has seen almost everything, if not everything, when it comes to health and well-being and symptoms and conditions and things that many of us deal with on a daily basis. And so tonight is really about a conversation that he's going to have with you. Very particularly tonight, he's going to focus on the importance of colon cleanse. We do have some very particular questions that we've set up for this. That being said, what makes these events really, really special is when we do hear from you. So please do send us questions, whether you do that to me directly or privately, or if you want to send a message to the whole group. I will do my very, very best to answer all those questions. I will give them to Russell after he shares what he wants to share with you all this evening. And so, without further ado, I will pass everything over to you, Russell.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for that great introduction to this month's masterclass, which is focused on our annual colon cleanse. So, yeah, it's interesting. I have been attending an event in New York City since probably 2010, sponsored by the Institute for Functional Medicine. It's called the Integrative Healthcare Symposium, and there are always at least 2,000 medical doctors and medical researchers and all kinds of other health practitioners, but there's a very sizable number. The majority of people in attendance are medical doctors who are transitioning from allopathic medicine, which is the dominant form of medicine in our culture, which basically only has two treatment options, no matter what the condition is, no matter what the symptoms are. And those two treatment options are pharmaceuticals or surgery. But the functional medicine health model, which has been evolving steadily over the last 40 plus years, looks at the body very differently and looks at remedies and solutions very differently. And so, even though I've been doing this work since 1980 with a focus primarily on digestive wellness, it took a little longer for um, other parts of the holistic movement to focus on digestive wellness. And of course, allopathic medicine is still very far behind in all this. But at this annual integrative healthcare symposium, the primary focus of the last 10, 15 years has been on what we call the intestinal microbiome. And no matter what the specialty was, so you'd have a researcher presenting information about Alzheimer's. And within the first minute of that presentation, he would say, oh, by the way, to begin the process of healing Alzheimer's, you need to fix the gut. And then another speaker would be talking about cardiovascular disease. And within the first minute of his or her presentation, they would say, uh, no matter, oh, Brian, we're getting a little feedback there or echo. Did you hear that? Okay. I don't hear it anymore. So the point is, no matter what the specialty was, because the purpose of that annual event, and it takes place over 3 or 4 days, is to showcase the most recent and up-to-date research information on how to address and resolve the full spectrum of chronic degenerative disease, how to prevent it from happening in the first place, but definitely showcasing remedies and solutions and approaches to restore health, even in the worst type of chronic degenerative conditions. And without exception, everyone would talk about the importance of restoring health to the gut microbiome. So I just wanted to make clear at the beginning here that even though we refer to this process as a colon cleanse, I've been using that phrase for many, many years because it's a lot easier to say colon cleanse versus saying a complete restoration and regeneration of the intestinal microbiome. That's quite a mouthful. So if you ever hear me use the term colon cleanse, it's not just to physically remove trapped fecal matter from the colon, although that definitely is part of it, and that's an important part of it. But the reason you want to do that is to make sure that this amazing ecosystem of organisms that live in the uh, intestines of the human being, in the large intestine, in the small intestine, is able to optimize its full potential. Because if a person had a truly healthy intestinal microbiome, the chances are extremely high that the rest of their body would also be very healthy. 80% of the antibody producing components of our immune system are manufactured in glands in the small intestine. So it's not a casual relationship between the health of the digestive system, the health of the microbiome, and the health of the immune system. It's it's a direct relationship. And so it's very important that everybody learns how and why this intestinal microbiome is so healthy, so important, and when it gets out of balance, how to reset it. So basically, that's what I do in my private practice when I work with people one on one. It doesn't matter what the symptoms are, it doesn't matter what the diagnosed condition is. We always start by fixing and resetting the intestinal microbiome. Now, while we do that, of course, I'm teaching people how to hydrate properly. I'm teaching people how to address micronutrient imbalances and deficiencies. I'm teaching people how to address macronutrient imbalances, the proper balance between our whole foods. I'm also looking at sources of oxidative stress, looking at sources of inflammation. But what's so interesting, or one of the things that's interesting, is that many people have done those things and yet they're not seeing any progress in their health. But once those same people go through a reset of their intestinal microbiome, everything changes. So there's just no question that this is the foundation of our health. I always like to say that when you actually see the small intestine, if you've ever seen photographs or images or illustrations, there's this component of the small intestine called the villi and the microvilli. And this is an area that actually does all the absorption and assimilation of our nutrients from the food that we eat. And this is identical to the root system of a plant. The way a plant in your garden or the way a plant in a forest takes up nutrients and water from the soil, the human body takes up its nutrients from the food that we eat through this internal root system of the villi and the microvilli. And it's alongside of this internal root system that our microbiome lives. And if the microbiome is healthy, then it's going to make sure that that root system of our body, which is so important, critical in our ability to digest, absorb, and assimilate all of the nutrients that we take in. So again, it's just an incredible relationship. It's very, very important. More and more doctors and researchers are coming to the same conclusion that it's the most important system of the body. Not just the digestive system, but the ecosystem that lives inside the digestive system, which is what we call the intestinal microbiome. So I just wanted to share a couple other quick things, and then we can move to the Q&A. A couple of the questions that we posed in the invitation was, what is diverticulosis, and do you have it? Second question is, what is intestinal dysbiosis, and how does it affect your health? And then number three, why is an annual colon cleanse so important? Not just for the purposes of better elimination, but for the entire health of for the health of the entire microbiome. So the first thing to say is that intestinal dysbiosis refers to the microbiome when it is out of balance. There are literally thousands of trillions of single cell organisms that live in the microbiome. When it's healthy, you would find 80% or more of all of the organisms that live in there would be probiotics, healthy bacteria. Scientists has found over 2,000 different strains, different varieties of probiotics. And those organisms eat your food, digest your food, and eliminate waste products. But the waste products of the probiotics, the waste products of the healthy organisms, are all health promoting, not just to your digestive system, but to all the systems of your body, to all the organs of your body, to every cell of your body. But when that ideal situation of 80% or more probiotics gets less, 70%, 60%, you start to have symptoms, maybe some gas, bloating, indigestion, acid reflux. But definitely when it gets to 50% or less, that's called intestinal dysbiosis. And when the bad organisms are not just bad bacteria, but virus, yeast, mold, fungus, parasites, all these kind of negative organisms are part of this complex that we call dysbiosis, intestinal dysbiosis. It simply means that the bad organisms are dominating the ecosystem. It's like the weeds taking over your garden, and you don't want that happening. So, just as you would as a gardener, and all good gardeners have to do weeding either every day or a couple of times a week, or the weeds will take over your garden. So, we have to learn how to do that same thing uh, in uh, in our diet, in our lifestyle, and that's basically the purpose of functional medicine and functional nutrition to teach us what to eat and what to avoid, so that we can grow this healthy, beautiful, magnificent microbiome and not be taken over by the weeds, not develop dysbiosis. So, diverticulosis simply means that because you've had dysbiosis for a while, your system has lost the ability to fully eliminate all the waste on a daily basis. And so you begin to eliminate less efficiently. Another way of saying that is you start to accumulate trapped fecal matter. And the presence of trapped fecal matter anywhere in your system, but most of the time it's happening in the colon, in the large intestine, and most of the time it's happening in the last 6 to 12 inches of the colon, called the sigmoid colon. But it can happen anywhere in any part of the 5 to 6 feet length of the large intestine. When that happens, when there's any degree of trapped fecal matter in your system, the trapped fecal matter becomes a breeding ground, a constant breeding ground of the bad organisms. And so that's why it's so problematic. That's why it's so important to do an annual cleanse. Don't let more than 12 months go by before you do a cleanse to make sure that you have completely eliminated any buildup that's occurred since the previous colon cleanse. And hopefully that previous colon cleanse was only 12 months ago, or not too much longer than 12 months ago. So by physically removing the trapped fecal matter using specialized herbs and a certain diet and digestive enzymes and probiotics, and I'll go over those things. We're only until we physically remove the trapped fecal matter does it become much easier to then build up this new microbiome or restore a healthier microbiome. And this is maybe the last point, and then we can move to Q&A. But the reason it doesn't work merely to change your diet or merely to change your diet and take probiotics is because if you have not removed physically the buildup of trapped fecal matter, there's no amount of supplemental probiotics that you can take that's going to outpace the production of bad organisms from that trapped fecal matter. So that's the connection. So we have to physically remove that bad stuff to make it possible to regrow the garden, to regrow this really healthy uh, microbiome. Okay, so it's amazing how many approaches there are today on the internet for achieving what I've just described. So I certainly am not claiming that I have the only system, the only way of addressing and resolving trapped fecal matter and intestinal dysbiosis. I can simply say, with a high degree of confidence and certainty, that I've used the same approach for the past 30 years. And when people do it correctly and consistently, especially if they let me guide them through through this process, I get way over 90% results. So that's very good news, and that's very impressive statistic for any practitioner doing any type of therapy or any type of remedy. So I've tried many times over the course of my career to teach people how to do this on their own. I've written 3 books, and a huge part of each of those 3 books was to explain how to do this colon cleanse, how to make possible this new and much healthier microbiome. And I've also done a video course where you can see me uh, demonstrating how to do the colon cleanse using these specialized herbs and other things. And by and large, what we found, Megan and Brian and I, have found that it's very difficult, no matter how good the guidance is, the written guidelines, and no matter how good the video guidelines are, if you've never done this before, it's challenging. And so um, I simply now believe from 50 years of experience that if you are struggling with dysbiosis, if you're struggling with any digestive system disorder, the fastest, surest, quickest, most effective way to address and resolve that problem is to work with me directly, one on one. Brian will mention this again before the end of the call, but sometimes I wish that wasn't the case, and it is definitely the case that some people have read my book, followed the guidelines in the book, purchased the supplements on their own, and did it successfully on their own without any contact with me or without any, I was going to say interference with me, interference from me, with any help from me, during that process. So it can be done, but it is few and far between people who've been able to do that successfully. So most people attempt it, they not sure what to do, they get uncomfortable, and then they give up because you don't want to make yourself more uncomfortable. And there is a way to do this safely and effectively without creating any more problems. So yes, you have to be hydrated. Yes, they have to eat a fairly focused diet of simple whole foods. I do recommend superfood and digestive enzymes and, of course, probiotics. But the products that I have used for the last 30 years to facilitate this process of the removal of any trapped fecal matter and the removal of the bad organisms is these products from the American Botanical Pharmacy. Thank you, Dr. Richard Schultz, for having created such amazingly safe, amazingly effective, amazingly helpful products that are specifically designed to facilitate this process of the restoration of the healthy microbiome. The three major products are intestinal formula number one, intestinal formula number two, and herbal mucil plus. Basically, intestinal formula number one is designed for constipation, if that's the primary symptom. Once things are moving, then you introduce the intestinal formula number two. Intestinal formula number two does the deep cleaning, the physical removal of any trapped fecal matter, and the physical removal of the bad organisms. And Herbal Mucil Plus is a very good fiber product made from psyllium seeds and flax seeds and psyllium husks and flaxseed husks with several other ingredients, but it makes the bowel movement softer. It makes for easier elimination. It's really amazing stuff. So it's the proper combination of these three products that really facilitates that process. And that's basically what I'm doing every day in my day job is guiding people through that process from start to finish. And at the end of that process, they will have a completely healthy microbiome with no more trapped fecal matter in their system. And just coincidentally, and now this will be the last comment I make, and then we'll move to Q&A. Just coincidentally, about 2 months ago, I was working with a woman, 91-year-old woman, and she had just had an abdominal X-ray. So she knew she was constipated, but she had the abdominal X-ray, and the abdominal X-ray showed a tremendous amount, a significant amount of trapped fecal matter in all the major parts of her colon, the descending colon, the transverse colon, and the ascending colon. And then she went through this process with me, guiding her through the process. And 3 months later, she had another set of abdominal x-rays taken. And those x-rays showed a completely clean colon. Now, of course, she was already having, normal bowel movements way before the 3 month mark, but she wanted to see with her own eyes on the x-ray. And so the doctor was able to show her the x-ray from 3 months ago and the x-ray from what turned out to be about a month ago. And completely clear, even at 91 years old. So it doesn't matter how old you are. This process is safe and effective for everyone. Okay, Brian, why don't we open it up for Q&A? Hopefully some people have put in the chat or message you directly questions about tonight's topic.
Yes, and thank you everyone for all the participation. I'm doing my best to get back to everyone directly. Many good questions, and we will, I promise, get to as many of them as possible. So thank you for that. And just a heads up, Russell is offering completely personal and customized colon cleanses for anyone who would like one. So if anything rings a bell or you feel like anything Russell has said um, feels like something that you're dealing with, again, Russell's been doing this for many decades. So if you want to send me a private message or even put something in the chat, we'll be sure that we connect with you directly. Again, he's very excited to do this time of year. It's something that he cares about deeply in his own health, and again, something he's been doing professionally for a long time.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Brian, sorry. I meant to say to everybody, I want you all to know that yesterday I started my annual colon cleanse. So I'm actually doing this right now myself, and it's always a very interesting process. So go ahead, let's see what questions are there.
Exactly. So he'll be doing it along with many, many people around the world, and he would be happy to connect with you directly to see how your own personalized, customized colon cleanse can work best for you. Okay. So, like I said, I will do my very best to get to everyone's questions. There have been a lot of them here privately, and there's some coming in the group here as well. Um, okay,
Brian,
first question.
let's start with Lorraine's question because that's one of my
Sure.
favorite stories and answers. So Lorraine asked if this was the cleanse that I used with my father a couple of years ago when my father was 99 years old. He had been brought to the hospital because he was not able to urinate. The doctors assumed that it was his prostate was the problem. But when my brother called me from the hospital, I asked I asked if they had taken an abdominal x-ray. They said yes. I asked my brother to go and ask the doctor one question. And the one question was, on that abdominal x-ray, was my father constipated? Did he have a lot of clearly visual trapped fecal matter in the lower part of his colon? And the doctor said yes. And so I said, okay, just bring him home. And we started the next day this exact colon cleanse. And 2 days later, he was eliminating a lot, and he was then able to urinate freely on his own. So there were no more complications in that area. And, it took several weeks to complete the cleanse. And I'm happy to report that my dad is still alive. He's doing well, and he will turn 103 years old in September. So, again, it doesn't matter what age we are, these approaches are safe and effective. And it's probably part of the reason he's so healthy into this very advanced age is he does all the things that I recommend that people do on a daily basis. And he has done, I wouldn't say he did an annual cleanse, but definitely every 3 or 4 years, I would call him and say, hey, we really need to do this. And obviously, that had not happened 3 or 4 years ago, or he wouldn't have gotten into that difficulty. Um, so again, the problem, so the lesson from that experience with my dad was diverticulosis is a very real problem. And as we age, the problem gets more and more advanced. I did a little Google searching before the session tonight and simply Googled diverticulosis statistics. And again, diverticulosis just means the presence of trapped fecal matter. Uh, Between the ages of 40 and 70, over 50% of the population in the United States has diverticulosis. Between the ages of 70 and 80, and I'm in that group now, over 70% of the population has diverticulosis. And over 80 years old, almost 100% of the population has diverticulosis at some level. And then that's diverticulosis. That means the presence of trapped fecal matter. And then the next statistic was diverticulitis, which means that the trapped fecal matter gets infected somewhere in a bowel pocket, and that becomes extremely painful. And over 200,000 people in the United States alone experience diverticulitis every single year. That's a big number. And those people have to go to the hospital And I think it said like 20% of those people had to have surgery to fix the problem. The other 80% were able to recover just from antibiotics. Antibiotics relieves the pressure and the pain by killing the bad bacteria that are causing the infection. But the antibiotics does nothing to remove the source of the problem, which is the trapped fecal matter. So, okay, that was all the statistics. And then I did Google one other thing. Since today is St. Patrick's Day, for those of you who have any Irish blood in you, the statistics in Ireland for the incidence of diverticulosis and diverticulitis were the same as the United States. So there you go. Okay, back to the questions.
And there's many coming in, but I just wanted to, this is a gut rules masterclass first, as far as I can remember. Um, we had a couple questions come in French, and I will say my mom knows a little bit of French. I took about 8 years a long, long time ago, but I promise you I will translate your question and I'll make sure that I get it answered. But I thought that was kind of fun. A gut rules masterclass first. Okay, back to the questions. I thought this was a great one. Again, it was sent over private, but it was essentially, how do I know if I need a colon cleanse? Like, are there specific signs and symptoms I should look out for?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, whoever asked that question. Thank you. Because the truth is, you can have serious diverticulosis. You can have 5 pounds, 10 pounds, or more of trapped fecal matter in your system and not know it at all, and not have any negative symptoms. So that's why I shared those statistics. So it simply is a good idea across the board, no matter how old you are. But certainly if you're older than 40, you want to learn how to do this to prevent problems from happening, certainly to prevent diverticulitis from happening, but learn how to do this to remove whatever amount is there. And the statistics are clear. If you're over 40, the chances are extremely high that you have some amount of trapped fecal matter in your system. And then once you learn how to do this, you can easily repeat that, once a year at a minimum, or once every 12 to 18 months. I would not go longer than 18 months without doing this. You can do that as I have done for the last 30 years of my life and plan to do it, for the rest of my life. It's easy, it's painless, it's very effective, and you always feel better when it's complete. So thank you for asking that question.
Awesome. And back to the group chat. How long does it take to do a full cleanse? And generally, how long for your digestive system to heal after a cleanse?
Okay, so good question. So, of course, many knowing people's attention span and knowing people's lack of time freedom, there are many, many practitioners um, who promote a 3-day cleanse, a 5-day cleanse. Um, my take on all of that is those are not very effective. When I work with somebody and find out that they've never done this type of comprehensive colon cleanse and reconditioning of the microbiome, it takes 4 to 6 weeks of using these herbal supplements because we move in gradually until we get to the optimum levels of the herbs every day. And then when we finish, usually within the 3 to 4 week mark, Then it takes at least 2 or 3 weeks to aggressively build up that microbiome before we can say, okay, the task is complete. We've achieved our goal of not only removing the trapped fecal matter and bad organisms, but reestablishing this healthy microbiome. So, so good news, bad news. If you've never done this before, you really need to do it properly. And for me, that means it's a minimum of 4 to 6 weeks, and then after that, you want to continue to eat certain foods and take probiotics and other supplements to make sure that that garden that you've just reestablished continues to grow and flourish so you don't run into problems right away. Many people do a short cleanse and they think that they've solved the problem, and then, you know, 2 or 3 weeks later, they're right back where they started from. So typically, those shorter cleanses are not very effective.
I thought this was a really good question. For people who are generally healthy, this person specifically said they actually feel great. They're, you know, a bit older, but they wanted to know like what could happen for someone like that that does a colon cleanse anyway.
Well, that would be
Someone,
great.
yeah.
Someone who's already healthy, they don't have any symptoms of diverticulitis, they don't have extreme gas or bloating, they don't have constipation, they have regular bowel movements, and so that's great. And lucky you. There are not many people who can say that. So that's awesome. And so whatever you're doing, obviously keep doing it. And I would say, you probably want to do a little research on your own to validate what I've shared about the incidence of diverticulosis, which again is, trapped fecal matter. And I think when you look at that, so to me, it's an ideal situation that somebody like you, who's healthy and isn't suffering at all from anything right now, that's the best time to learn how to do this, because it's gonna be a pain-free experience, and you're gonna learn something that's extremely helpful to maintaining your health and optimizing your health down the road. And so it's doing this colon cleanse can be, if it's done correctly, completely painless, completely a comfortable experience. And so yeah, so whatever, sometimes you read these horror stories of people doing colon cleansing and they're, going to the bathroom 10 times a day. That's not the way I practice this. Even with the most aggressive type of colon cleanse that I do using these special herbal products, people will definitely have one bowel movement a day. Maybe they'll have two, but three at the most would be like the most that you would want to have during this process. Now, of course, there are almost 50% of the population, when they have a digestive system disorder, they're having um, um, frequent, urgent, loose type of bowel movements. And so for those people, we start the cleanse not by increasing bowel movements, but by slowing things down. And for that, we use the intestinal formula number 2 product. That's the remedy for diarrhea. It's the remedy for loose, urgent bowel movements. It slows things down and will help to form those bowel movements, and then do the bigger job of removing trapped fecal matter and the bad organisms. Okay, next question.
Awesome. This was another great one. Essentially, just when doing a colon cleanse, do you find that it is just specifically impacting that part of the body, or do you ever see any other benefits throughout the body when a colon cleanse goes successfully?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking that question. So most of the people who contact me for assistance, the primary problem is in the digestive system. But depending on how long that digestive system problem has existed, they typically also have other health challenges, aches and pains, fatigue, mood swings, anxiety, depression, skin problems, skin disorders. I already mentioned joint problems. So it's what's so interesting is even though we're focused on the colon cleanse, on this reconditioning process, when we come to the end of that process, many times the person will say, "Oh, by the way, most or all of those other issues that I had have cleared up during the process of the colon cleanse." So, as I said at the beginning of the presentation tonight, when your gut is healthy, truly healthy, chances are good that lots of other problems disappear. And so that is definitely the case. So sorry, one other thing. The number one beneficial side effect, you don't hear that term very often. Usually you're hearing about adverse side effects or negative side effects from medications. But the single most beneficial side effect of going through this process that I've been describing is healthier skin. Healthier skin. And many times it's happening, the person hasn't noticed, but the husband or wife of that person has noticed, or a friend has noticed, and they'll say, "Wow, Phyllis, your skin looks awesome. What did you do?" And then they'll notice and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, yeah." So the largest organ responsible for the elimination of waste in our body is the colon, is the digestive system. But the second largest organ responsible for the elimination of waste is our skin, which is why so many people who have constipation or IBS or dysbiosis also often typically have skin problems as well. So when you clear up the gut, when you restore health to the gut, most skin problems will also disappear. And then the way to maintain healthy skin is to maintain a healthy intestinal microbiome. Thank you for that question.
All right, awesome. And there were a couple questions about like colonoscopy prep and a lot of elimination happening with that. What is the impact of all that elimination? How does it
Yeah, I
matter?
get, I totally get it. I get that question a lot. So the colon prep is designed to clean out the lowest part of the colon, the rectum and the sigmoid colon. So maybe 18 to 20 inches up into that uh, part of the intestine. But it does not address 80% of the rest of the large intestine. So that prep for the colonoscopy is just so they can get their equipment up into up into the colon and start to be looking with the camera without interference from trapped fecal matter, because the doctors know that's where most of that trapped fecal matter is sitting, in that last 2 feet of the colon. So that prep in no way addresses or resolves trapped fecal matter in the other 80% of the large intestine. Um, and let me say something about colonoscopies. since we brought it up. So again, the prep is not the same at all as a proper colon cleanse. Although lots of people think that it was because a lot can come out in that prep, but again, that's in the lowest part of the colon. Um, so colonoscopies are generally recommended starting at age 50. Now they might even be recommending at age 45 or even age 40 because of the statistics that I shared earlier. And a colonoscopy, um, unfortunately, does not it's not the best way to identify the presence of trapped fecal matter because a lot of the trapped fecal matter gets trapped in these bowel pockets, these kind of muscular pouches that exist outside the main canal of the colon. So the colonoscopy is really the primary purpose of a colonoscopy is to rule out colon cancer. And so that's what they're looking for. They're looking to make sure that there is no clear evidence of a tumor. And so they can see that very clearly on the colonoscopy. They can see polyps on a colonoscopy. Most polyps turn out to be benign. They don't necessarily turn into cancer. Um, so a colonoscopy is not helpful, really, in identifying trapped fecal matter. The simplest way to do that is through an abdominal X-ray. Now, let me just share one other thing about the risks or the danger of a colonoscopy. I was explaining to somebody earlier today that the number one reason for dysbiosis, the number one cause of a severely imbalanced microbiome is antibiotics. People take antibiotics for a sinus infection or a lung infection, and then they end up messing up their microbiome because the antibiotic killed not only all the bad organisms, but ended up killing all the good organisms as well. And then that person who was prescribed the antibiotics was not instructed about how to rebuild their microbiome, which is going to be severely negatively impacted by the antibiotics. So when I do a history of people, when did your colon problems begin? When did your digestive system problems begin? Many people will tell me it happened after I took an antibiotic for a week or 2 weeks, but it wasn't for a digestive system problem. It was for, like I said, a sinus problem or a bronchitis type of problem, a lung problem. The second biggest cause for messing up the microbiome is food poisoning. Uh, Restaurant, usually from eating out at a restaurant. And it wasn't the food, it was someone who handled the food who transferred their bacteria onto the food. Happens all the time. It's terrible. Um, so that's literally the number two cause of digestive system problems when they get very serious. But the number three cause, the third most frequently uh, uh, assessed cause of the dysbiosis is a colonoscopy. So I have met with many people who did not have a history of colon problems at all, did not have a history of digestive system problems at all, but at age 45 or 50, they were told to have their first colonoscopy. And so they did. They did the bowel prep, they had the colonoscopy, they went home, they felt maybe some minor, upset, maybe for a day or two. They had, some loose bowel movements. But then they were told that that might happen, but everything should clear up in a couple of days, and then it doesn't clear up or in a couple of days, and then it goes on for a couple of weeks, and then it goes on for a couple of months. Unfortunately, they call the doctor and they say, "Hey, I think that colonoscopy messed me up," and then the doctor says, "No, no, that's not what happened." So, but you can look this up online. You can look up however you want to search that, colonoscopy's gone wrong or something. But the equipment that's used for a colonoscopy has to be cleaned off by human beings. And sometimes they don't do a proper job or a totally thorough job. And I know that's a terrible thing to have to share, but it's true. So you have to be super careful when you have a colonoscopy. It's why I don't uh, recommend them, only in the most extreme situations. And of course, it depends on the person. If you are medically oriented and your medical doctor insists on a colonoscopy, then you should probably do that. But if you are somebody who is either learning how to be more proactive in your own self-care, then this is something down the road that when you become more familiar with your own self-care in this area of digestive wellness and learn how to do an annual colon cleanse, then the chances that you'll ever truly need a colonoscopy go way, way down. I personally do not. I had a colonoscopy at age 18, and that's the only one I ever planned to have. So that was a long
All right.
answer, but
Well,
there we are.
thank you so much. And just very quickly, I know we're at the end of our time here live together, and thank you for all the great questions. This has been incredibly lively and so much fun. And just a quick shout out. Russell has worked with many, many kids over the years. I could tell more stories than we have time for kids that my dad worked with when I was a kid and who are now adults and still reach out to my dad and share the many successes and just incredible lives that they're now living, coming from extremely challenging situations. So just thank you for those questions. Yes, Russell works with kids and can answer any of those more specific questions
Yeah, I
directly.
think I think the youngest child I ever worked with was 18 months. Okay. That's the record. And then I've worked with 3 and 4 year olds. So again, obviously in those situations, the mom or the dad or the mom and the dad have to be very involved. But literally, these same products can be used even with children. They're totally safe, totally effective, and of course, we're doing other things, not just using the herbs. So again, doesn't matter what age the person is, there is a way that we can help them. And I know we need to wrap it up. Thank you so much, everybody, for your patience and for your listening and for your great questions. And so, Brian, I don't have any final words tonight, so you can go ahead and wrap it up and then stop the recording.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for being here. It is only possible to create events like these with you. We can't do it without you. And it is a joy for all of us to create each individual event with everyone who shows up live and everyone who tunes into the recordings. It is it is very special to be able to create opportunities for education and guidance, and especially if it's coming from a place of knowing and understanding. And we thank you all for bringing your questions and bringing your energy. And we hope that there was one thing or maybe a few things that you learned tonight that you can bring out in the world that could maybe help someone else if you're someone who showed up that is healthy. And maybe you showed up here because you have something that you're struggling with, and we'd love to connect and help. And maybe you got everything you needed from this call, and maybe you do want to direct your question to Russell, and please do connect with him. Russell makes his schedule open. There's a 30-minute meeting that you can have with him that's completely free. And he does that because he wants to help and he wants to connect with all of you. And again, if you want to do the colon cleanse, Russell's doing one himself. He can create a completely personalized and customized colon cleanse just for you. But most of all, thank you everyone for being here. We'll see you all in the next one and have a great night. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
everyone for
you.
coming.
Thank you.